Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a video. Time for the review of the Master Force Machete. Now, this is my second attempt at making the video because it got too long for my liking. I'm trying to keep my video short and concise because of my rambling. And second reason is that it turned into a comparison video between this and this. And if I'm going to make a comparison video, it's going to be a separate thing. But in any case, the Master Force Machete. Now, in my opinion, this is a machete that you should buy. Not for, like, gardening or anything. This is a camping machete. And real quick, what I mean by a gardening machete is this. Fun fact, this is actually the first ever blade I did a cutting video with, back when I was Backwoods Samurai and when I started as Outlaw Samurai. This is the blade featured in the very first cutting session. It's old, it's rusty, it's patined. But it just needs a couple of passes with the 80, 250, and 6000, and it'll be a razor blade again. So, back onto this machete. Now, I'm going to keep this again clear and concise. There are two cons to this machete that aren't major cons, but cons I must point out nonetheless. Sorry, my sinuses are flushing. Now, the two cons to this machete are as follows. In the grip and in the pommel. The grip is aggressive, but also not aggressive. And I know you're probably sitting at your computer like, Outlaw, what the hell do you mean aggressive, but not aggressive? Is it like the psychopossessive girlfriend I had back in college? No. That was only your poor choices. But in any case. Oh, and shout out to Carlo Ruger, who prompted me to make this video as quickly as I possibly could. Because he wants to buy one of these, and he wants to see what it can do first. Which I've already made this testing video. I may also make a supplementary testing video with water bottles once I restock. I am currently out. That's why I haven't done any cutting videos. Because I'm being a lazy bastard and not wanting to fill them. But in any case, back to the machete. So, what I mean by aggressive but not aggressive is simply, if you're not wearing gloves, over time this rubber grip will start to dig too deep into, it wants to dig into your hand. It's a good thing, but also a bad thing. Because it will start to develop blisters. Now, you may be like, tough man, this turn blistered and callous, meh. But most people aren't like that. Most people, when they start to get blisters, they'll put the thing up. And either wait till their blisters go away, or never want to do that again and risk destroying their project by using a power tool that does the work for them. But when you're wearing gloves, that's a different story. If you're just wearing work gloves, like leather work gloves or work gloves in general, you're not going to feel that aggressiveness so much. It's mitigated by the glove. So that's what I mean by aggressive, but not aggressive. Second is the pommel. Now, this pommel acts in place of a lanyard. It has a lanyard hole, but I feel like that's just like an added bonus. Like a extra, like if your gun has a safety, and then like a trigger lock on it, where you have to disengage the safety and the trigger lock before you can fire. That's basically the same thing here. It's giving you an added layer of security versus something like this with no pommel. Sure, the Gerber, it has the lanyard, so if shit happens, the lanyard keeps the machete from flying away and also gives you quick recovery. But it's because there's no pommel that shit happens. You notice how I dodged the machete. Yeah, that thing is, to my level, sharp. And I'm not going to harp on that because we've seen the level of sharpness my blades have. So, yeah, that's why I had to dodge, because if that thing performs an accidental slicing motion, it's going to go through this shirt and probably into my flesh. This one has the pommel here that catches on your fingers. Now, if you're going to use this like all day, every day, really intensely, then I would suggest the lanyard as aforementioned earlier, the trigger lock to your safety. But because there's a pommel here, I feel much more secure versus the Gerber. Simply because of this pommel. Now you may be thinking, Outlaw, you said that the pommel had a con, but all you're doing is talking about positives. Well, I'm getting to the con here in a moment. As Matthew Jensen would say, this thing likes to dig into the fluff of your hands. And what I mean by that is, these things could easily be mitigated just by taking a file and rounding them out more, or just flattening them. But as we can see here, in certain grips, it likes to dig into the fleshy part of your palm. Now, I don't feel that, but depending on your hand size, it may or may not affect you. If you have big sausage fingers, then it may affect you more than someone with French fry fingers. Or in my case, I have like in between where it's just the ballpark hot dog fingers. So, it doesn't really affect me much. Or at all. But it is a con that I had to point out. It may dig into your hand in certain grips that you're using. However, now that the cons are out of the way, I can talk about the pros. First of all, its price. At $20 to $25 at your local Menards, you get a shit ton for your buck. You get a good, reliable, shock-absorbing handle with a pommel and a courtesy lanyard hole. They didn't have to put the lanyard hole here. This is a courtesy that they put for people who like lanyards. You get a very good saw. Like, the saw on this thing sucked when I first used it. Couldn't cut with a damn. This thing just goes through wood like a freaking chainsaw. Like a handheld chainsaw. The edge, even after all that chopping, is just as sharp as it was before. I have not touched this edge since unboxing and or chopping with it. Oh, come on. You did it with wrapping paper. Of course, to its credit, receipt paper is harder to cut. Like, you can hear it wants to catch. I kind of did it there, but the receipt paper ain't easy to cut. Especially when it's crumbled up like this. There we go. Well, it cut and then tore a little bit. But yeah. It is still as sharp as when it came out of the box, even with all that chopping. Sorry about that. As I said, my sinuses are draining, and talking doesn't exactly help that process. So, all in all, Carl Ruger, who is the major contributing factor of the expedience of this review, if you are wanting to buy one of these from your local Menards, then I would definitely 100% say that this is a great machete to buy. Not so much for the garden, but if you're going camping, or maybe even on a survival trek, like if you're a prepper or a survivalist and you go on a yearly a week-long vacation every year where you go out into the middle of the woods and survive off of nothing but what you scavenge and what you find, then, or if you're even an active bushcrafter, this may very well replace a folding saw for you. Now, I know folding saws and bushcraft go together like peanut butter and jelly, but I'm saying that if you had to leave your folding saw behind and only take this, This would honestly take the place of that folding saw very easily. Also, you could then just flip it around and you could then take off small limbs and shit much closer than if you have much easier than with that folding saw. You could take them down almost flush with the tree in one just movement. So good for bushcrafting as well. You could use it for the garden, but I don't think that the way with how well this thing is built, I think that would kind of be insulting to it, personally. Now, you may be wondering why I'm hyping this thing up, and it's not just because I work at Menards, it's because I generally believe that this is a very, very good machete for the budget, and if it works as well on water bottles as it did on the wood, then it may just well be, this may well become the official machete of the Outlaw Samurai channel, just as the Bowie knife, Outlaw Bowie from Timber Rattler, became our channel's official Bowie knife. But yeah, it is a very, very good machete for the price. And you may be wondering why I keep saying for the price, for the price, for the price. Well, this machete was like $7 when I bought it. Way back yonder. Back in 2016 when the world was right and you didn't hear all this fucking bullshit about COVID. But I digress. The reason why I'm hyping the price is because this is almost $10 to $15 more expensive, this Gerber. And it came so dull that it couldn't even cut with a damn anything. The saw also sucked. It would bind, it would stop cutting 3 seconds after doing anything with it. I mean, now it's sharp because I recently sharpened it on the work sharp. But there's another thing why I'm comparing these two. This is this is almost $10 to $15 more expensive at $30 to $35 depending on where you buy it. To this $25 machete that came sharp enough to cut paper. It cut wrapping paper as we saw in the unboxing. That came with a fully functioning saw as we saw in the test. That came with the pommel, with a pommel and a lanyard hole versus just a lanyard hole. Now I get it. The lanyard is there for when shit happens. Like you're chopping and then all of a sudden, bam. I know this is just unrealistic that you're just going to drop the machete half chopped, but still, it can happen. And it's there to catch the machete so it doesn't fly away. And I get that. That's the purpose of the lanyard hole. But this has the pommel in it that locks into the bottom of your hand. Yes, it may be painful, but it still locks into your hand with the pommel. And it has a courtesy lanyard hole, so if shit happened, you could still catch it with the lanyard. So, just a little more design and thought went into this, in my opinion, than the Gerber. One last thing I'm going to compare, the Gerber is going to be the price comparison for this one. I will say this, the Gerber comes with a much better sheath than the Masterforce. The Gerber does come with this much thicker, stronger nylon with plastic inserts. It has a retention strap, and it has the ability to be mounted through your belt, same way as this. This doesn't have the retention strap on it. And if a retention strap is a really big thing for you, honestly, if you wanted to, what I would do is just simply tie a piece of paracord around here, loop it through, and maybe just, I don't know, sew on a piece of leather or something and just tie the paracord around that. Or just loop it through the lanyard hole, pinch it, wrap it around twice, and then threaded through the back. There are ways you could make a retention strap for this. Though, with the Gerber already having a retention strap, I guess you could justify that. I will say this. The money you're paying for the Machete is basically all put into the Machete. It's like when I said when I was talking about you're buying the sword, not the... It's like when I was making the review of the Warrior O Katana. I paid for the sword, but I also just paid extra for the fittings and the scabbard that came with it. I'm going to assume about 20 of those dollars went into making this, the blade. And maybe 5 went into making the sheath. Which isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it still does what it's supposed to, and it does have a slight bit of retention to it because of how it's fitted. And but the Gerber, on the other hand, if you don't have that retention strap tightened, there's no retention on the Gerber. And I want to say about maybe $28-ish, or I want to say the actual, I want to say about, if they're going to, $20 went into making this, and the extra $15 went into making the sheath for it. You can tell where the majority of the money was put on a tool or a weapon just by feeling it and seeing if it comes with a case or not. Most companies will put the majority of the money you spend into the actual product itself, and any case or covering that comes with it will either be a free add-on or will be subtracted from the full cost. There is one thing to mention, and that's the tip of this scabbard is awfully flexy, and that's because the blade does not actually go all the way down to the bottom. I assume that's because that these are just generic scabbards that I don't know if Master Force sells a bigger machete without a sawback blade, but I want to assume that Master Force has a slightly bigger machete and they just use the same sheath for all their machetes. So that helps cut costs. Same with the Gerber. The Gerber is mass produced and they use the same sheath for all the Gerbers. But, okay, this has become a much shorter video than the other one would have been. I'm trying to keep this sub 20 minutes. So, in conclusion, I believe that for the money you pay, this is just a better deal at $20, $25 than the Gerber, and it's more ergonomic for your hand to grip. That one's basically just a rectangle, the grip is. Now, at the end of the day, this is just my personal opinion from my usage of this thing. And it may just be some of my fanboy fetish, just still in here, like the honeymoon stage of buying a new sword, as Joe from JBS Bladecraft would say. But, in any case, I do believe that this is a better option than this, just simply because this already came sharp, has a functioning saw out of the box that you don't have to do anything to, and just all around feels better in my hand than the Gerber. I may or may not be making a comparison between this and the Gerber video later on, but until next time, my noble band of outlaws and Carl Ruger. Until next time, my noble band of outlaws and Carl Ruger, Outlaw Samurai, tells all y'all be crazy rednecks, be safe and use your weapons, and Carl, I can definitely tell you that you would not waste the money on this machete. Just be forewarned that it might have just an ever so tiny bend in the blade. Whereas the Gerber has a much bigger bend in its blade, out of the box. So I'm out. Peace.